Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Weeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome to our lovely guest today, Sue Stone.
Hi.
Hello, Sue. Hi. Sue is the current chair and exhibiting member of the internationally renowned 62 group of textile artists and a fellow of the Society of Designer Craftsmen. She is based in northeast Lincolnshire on the east coast of England and is best known for compositions with a partial narrative that often feature a fish. This is a symbol of her Grimsby heritage. With its emphasis of hand embroidery, Sue's work is usually figurative and textural. Her inspiration is drawn from memories and relationships and life observations. She returned to embroidery after a long career in fashion design and manufacture, and since 2006, her work has been widely exhibited throughout the UK and in Europe, the USA, Pakistan and Japan. So, Sue, before we get started with your Stitchery story today, would you like to share with us what you are working on and what's got you excited?
Well, at the moment, I've just finished a series of portraits about identity called This Is Me, and they're inspired by humankind's urge to categorise.
Right.
And they're a series for the Through Our Hands gallery at the Festival of Quilts in August.
Ah, right. And the Festival of Quilts, is that the one at NEC?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's on from 10th to 13th of August.
Right. Oh, that's quite soon then, isn't it?
Mm.
Looming. Has that been sent off then? Do you have a date when you have to send everything off for exhibitions like that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's just gone off to them, ready for them to curate their gallery. So, yeah. So I don't know if it's arrived yet, but hopefully it will do in the next day or two.
Right. So that must be quite kind of mixed emotions, really. Then it's like, oh, phew, it's done, and then it's like, oh, off it goes, and then kind of see how it's interpreted in the exhibition as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's as I say, really, it's a piece. I'm asking people to form their own opinion of who I really am.
Right.
So, because the portraits are of me as other people. So, as I say, they are portraits about identity. So I've got everything in there, from me as a bag lady to me looking very glamorous in an exotic turban, to me as Hilda Ogden.
Yeah.
You name it, it's in the installation. So we'll wait and see how it's received.
Yeah, no, that's quite a unique idea as well. I don't think I've come across anybody doing that, and certainly not in Stitch. So whatever gave you the idea for doing that?
Well, I don't like my portraits to be straightforward.
Uh-huh.
When I do them, I like them to say something.
Yes.
So I've sort of had this idea in my mind for actually quite a number of years,
Uh-huh.
that I would do something about identity, and I saw an opportunity here to do the piece because they wanted a new piece for the gallery, so they didn't want work that had been seen before.
Right.
So I decided to pursue the idea, which, as I say, I'd had for a few years.
Yes. Oh, that's great.
How it came about in the first place, I don't know.
Well, sometimes these ideas, they do just appear, don't they? They appear in your head, and for a while you don't even know it's in your head, and then it starts to kind of creep out a bit. Certainly when I have ideas, it creeps out, and then all of a sudden you acknowledge that idea's there. So as you say, over a while you kind of think, and it kind of percolates a bit, doesn't it, really? Certainly that's how I think of things. So, that's absolutely fantastic. Well, I don't know if actually I'm away, so I won't be able to go down there, but that sounds brilliant, and I'm sure we'll be seeing plenty of images of your exhibition as well. Anything else that you're kind of currently finishing off or busy working on at the moment then?
Well, I've also just finished some work for an exhibition called Unknown People,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually a local exhibition. So it's at Cleethorpes in the Discovery Centre.
Right.
And that starts next week, and it's on till the end of September, I think.
Right.
Yeah, end of September. So Yeah, so that's another one. They were delivered yesterday as well. So,
oh, well,
so
you've had such a busy week then. Thank you so much for finding some time in between all of this to actually tell us about what you've been up to. So that's fab. Now, in your bio, you said that you'd had a long career in fashion design and that you'd come back to embroidery. So how did you first get involved, and possibly who taught you, and how did you get back into it, I suppose, because that's interesting in itself.
Well, I mean, I first got into sewing because of my mum.
Mm-hmm.
My mum was a tailoress, and she could make anything out of cloth. So I was brought up surrounded by fabric and making. I eventually ended up going to art school. I must say, it had never been mentioned as a career option at the grammar school that I went to. But
well, it's not a proper job, is it? Really, being an artist?
No. But my boyfriend was at the art school, and he suggested that I could go and study fashion. So off I went, and I studied fashion at St Martin's School of Art.
Yeah.
But I didn't become interested in embroidery till I was unhappy with the course at St Martin's. It didn't suit me.
Right.
And so I actually spent a couple of years working in London before I discovered the textile embroidery course at Goldsmith's when I was 20.
Yeah.
And it was there I discovered Constance Howard.
Right.
And Constance Howard was, well, I mean, she's an icon really in the embroidery
absolutely.
world. She's the person who really started embroidery courses in art schools.
Yeah.
And she was a small person with bright green hair. And it was her enthusiasm for embroidery that made me want to stitch.
Right.
So I was taught by Constance but also by Arian Short and Christine Risley. And they were all practicing artists at the time. So it was a big advantage to be taught by those people.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. But once I graduated, of course, I had to earn a living.
Yes.
And so I actually came back to fashion design as a way of doing that.
Yeah.
Because I was still, even though I'd gone into embroidery, I was still designing clothes and making clothes all the time. So it seemed a way to make a living. So actually, my husband and I had our own business for a long time, well, almost 30 years.
Oh, crikey.
And it was only when I reconnected with an old tutor from Grimsby School of Art, Alf Ludlam, and I was talking to him about, my work and everything. And he said to me, well, do you ever do any embroidery nowadays? And I said, well, no, actually, I've not done any for nearly 30 years.
Oh, crikey.
He said, don't you think it's about time you started doing your own work again? And really, that was what set me off on the route to doing my embroidery again. And that would be around 2002. But I didn't seriously start going again till 2003-04.
Yes. Well, I think it's a really fascinating story, that and the not circuitous route, but the long route that you've taken to come back into something now, which you're absolutely, you love doing, you're really, really busy and obviously loving it. So in terms of, I mean, you've mentioned Alf as a major inspiration, and Constance and the other people who got you going in with your course. So on top of that fantastic list, would you say there's anything else that's been major inspirations to you over the years, and also, of course, currently?
Well, I suppose, I mean, most of my inspiration comes from my own life. It comes from my relationships, life observations, and of course a pride in my heritage.
Yes.
And the inspiration I get from the people of Grimsby, really. But I also love artists such as Grant Wood. I've done a lot of transcriptions of his work in the past. There's an artist called Amrita Sher-Gill, which I think won't be a familiar name to a lot of people.
No.
But she had a large exhibition at the Tate in London a few years ago.
Yeah.
And she's sort of known as the Indian Frida Kahlo.
Right.
Because she does a lot of, or she did do, she's no longer with us, but she did lots of portraits and self-portraits. And her work is, the compositions are just beautiful, and the colour palette that she uses. But I also like people like Peter Blake and, of course, Grayson Perry, whose humour is and intelligent interpretation of it is fantastic. But as far as stitches are concerned, I would say I'm not particularly influenced by anybody, but I admire the work of people like Audrey Walker, in particular, because she can sort of really use hand stitch to its best effect in the portraits that she makes. And I love the series of work by Jenny Dutton, the ones she's done a whole series of work about her mother and her dementia. And they're beautiful portraits, very, very unsentimental, and they're beautifully executed. And I believe at the minute some of them are at the Rijswijk Biennial in The Hague in Netherlands. But those are beautiful pieces of work.
Well, I shall have to look those up because I haven't really come across either of those. And again, interestingly, they feature portraits. It's a real thing of yours, isn't it? A real strength, as you say, even with your this is me and your other work. It's all very much down to portraits.
Very drawn to people. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And even the thought of coming up with a series of textile art, embroidery based around dementia is quite an unusual thing in itself. And obviously recording your mother's journey through that in stitch is a very, very unique way of doing it. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go and have a look at those and see if I can find some links somewhere to put in the show notes. That'd be fantastic. One of the things I absolutely love doing about these chats is that I also learn a ton of things, and it brings a different perspective and different work to me and to anybody listening as well. And that's the kind of whole reason why I do this, is that people are sharing their life in fabric and thread, sharing inspirations and sharing work and different ideas. And thank you for sharing those with us, Sue. That's fantastic. Now, in terms of techniques, you have a definite style, I would say, that's evolved. So your favourite techniques, why have you kind of worked in the way that you do, and why do you like them so much?
Well, I suppose I absolutely love hand stitch.
Yeah.
I would say nowadays that's my main technique. And I think because it's one of those things you can actually do anywhere. Mm-hmm. You can take it with you if you go somewhere, and you can still carry on with it.
Yes.
But also it's the immediacy of it. You're holding the cloth in your hand and you're working the needle through the cloth. It's very therapeutic. I use some machine stitch, which can sometimes can invigorate the work, mm-hmm. but I wouldn't ever use it as my main technique. I use a lot of applique because, again, it's immediate. You can change something very quickly with applied fabrics.
Yes.
Sort of more recently, I've also used a bit of acrylic paint on my work, but that's still an evolving technique for me. But as I say, mainly I'll come back to the hand stitch because the hand stitch is the most important technique that I use. And I only use a very small vocabulary of stitches.
So, that's such a great thing to hear as well, because I think people, especially as people are starting out as well, they get this impression of embroidery as being really fancy and technically very difficult, and it has to be perfect, and there's all these fancy, complicated stitches, when really the basic stitch is put your needle in and put it back down again. And I think looking at your work is an inspiration to others, in that you can create some fantastic pieces, as you say, with a small variety of stitches.
Yes, Constance Howard gave me some fantastic advice many years ago when I was at Goldsmiths, and she said you don't actually need to know many stitches. What you actually need to know is how to get the most out of them. And I think this is the whole thing, that my work's very ideas based, So I actually don't need to use fancy techniques because it's the idea that's the strong part of the work.
Yes.
Technique, I try to do it as well as I can, but I'm never going to be making perfect stitches because that's just not me.
Certainly, when looking at your pieces, the thing that I really like about them as well is when you look at them closely, you can see how you've made something look like a tweed jacket or a stripy sofa or a brick wall. I love the texture that you managed to build in your pictures.
Yeah, I think the techniques that I use, because they are simple, that you can layer them.
Right.
And I always think of everything in layers.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I always say that that's how my work is built. It's built in layers. Yeah. So I think this is the whole thing.
Yeah. And the stitches that you use?
Well, very, very few. I use straight stitches, I would say, in all the guises.
Yeah.
They're my most used stitches. But I'll use a little bit of cross stitch, only in a sort of free form, not in any formalised way.
Yes.
Chain stitch, needle weaving be something I use quite a lot.
Yes.
And that's about it, really. I don't really use anything else. I do mix my threads in the needle and different colours.
Yeah.
Because I find that adds to the textural quality. So I do that a lot.
Yeah, now somebody I was talking to the other week did that a lot as well, sometimes up to 4 strands of different colour. And I thought, oh yes, that's something that I'm definitely going to give that a go. I haven't done that, but I can see that being a really useful thing. And I sometimes think to myself, crikey, Susan, will you stop doing backstitch? You know, the few pieces I've done recently seem to be backstitch and straight stitch, and I was almost thinking, really, I fancy doing something with something other than straight stitches. And then, of course, the piece I'm working at the moment, guess what's in there? Yeah. Well, I thought, no, I'm not going to do backstitch, so I'm doing split stitch. Well, that's really like backstitch.
Right. Yes.
But I do actually quite like French knots, I have to say. I've done pieces with plenty of those, clustered. I love the texture of French knots as well. So you were just explaining there about doing pieces of work for 2 exhibitions at the moment. What would you say has been the high point of your textile art and embroidery journey so far, Sue?
Oh, well, this is really difficult because I have several things that I've thought have been the high point, and then something else comes along.
Something's come along, which is fabulous.
Yeah. So I suppose becoming a member of the 62 group for a second time in 2008 was a real high point for me. It gave me a lot of confidence.
Yes.
In my work.
You have to be invited to that, don't you?
Well, years ago when it was in the early days, it was by invitation.
Right.
Nowadays, it's by selection, and it's a very rigorous 2-stage selection. So, first of all, you send images, and then if you get through to the second stage, you have to send actual work, which is looked at by a selection panel.
Right.
I originally was a member in 1975 when I was invited by Arian Short to be a member. She was chair at the time.
Yeah.
And but because with the 62 group, each and every exhibition is also selected. I, having a young family and a business to run, couldn't make the work, so I lost my membership. So when I started stitching again, it was my primary ambition was to become a member, and I actually achieved that in 2008. But this year, I've also had my first solo exhibition in the USA, which was a real highlight, and that was at the Owen James Gallery in New York. And that was a really successful exhibition for me. But the icing on the cake this year has to be the front cover of Embroidery magazine.
Yes, I was wondering if you were going to say that. That was fantastic. Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty special.
So have you got plenty of those stashed away?
Yeah, I think I've only got a couple because I keep giving them away.
Yeah. I mean, make sure you don't give them all away. Think, oh, drat, I don't have a copy of the magazine anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just absolutely wonderful. And having an exhibition in New York as well. That was, that was really exciting. How did that come around?
Well, it's funny, really. I was invited sort of out of the blue. It turned out that Owen, who owns the gallery, had seen my work on the 62 Group website. And he'd seen that through an article. There's a guy called John Hopper who writes articles about embroidery, and he'd written an article about the 62 Group for an American magazine. And so that's where the connection came. And then through that, he invited me to meet him in London to show him my work.
Yes.
And when he saw the work, he just said, yes, I'd like to give you a solo exhibition. And so that was in May this year. So, yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. And in terms of business as well, when I talk with my business coach, we quite often laugh when myself and other members of our group come along and say, oh, yeah, I've had this contact really out of the blue. And yet when we look at it, it's not out of the blue at all. There's always something that somebody found us.
Yes.
And they saw us and then thought, oh, yes, I want to speak to this person. And then you meet them. And then over a period of time, that relationship's built and something happens. So it's not ever really out of the blue, but it does all make us laugh when it's, oh, out of the blue, this person contacted me. Yeah, well, but what you don't know is the 3 months in the background that they've been stalking you in a nice way, finding out about you, and you keep popping up and stuff. So that always makes me laugh out of the blue. Yeah. Fabulous. Now, when we're all busy doing our stitching and so forth, quite often things don't go quite as planned. Do you have any instances where possibly something sticks in your memory where something didn't work out quite as planned? And, well, we won't say a disaster, but it wasn't quite the same as what you'd thought. And the most important thing is, what did you learn from that experience? And, possibly you can share something with us all to help us if we come up with something that's not quite as we'd expected it to be.
Well, actually, I've had quite a few disasters along the way. Now, Alf Ludlam, who I mentioned earlier on,
yes,
always said you should never discard your pieces of work. You should always look at it, take the best bits and use them again.
Yes.
So basically, my disasters always seem to get reused, but a lot of my portraits, early portraits in particular, when I was doing a lot more machine stitching,
yes,
and they were quite heavily machine stitched. If the faces didn't look quite right, I would just actually cut them out and do a bit of reverse applique,
yes,
and insert some more fabric from the back and rework the face.
Yeah.
So actually the back of those pieces is really, really interesting. It's sort of like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yes. And have you got photos of those? Is that something that you keep?
I do actually have some photographs of some of those.
Yeah.
Somewhere in my many hundreds of thousands of photographs.
Yeah. No, that was quite interesting to see how something's evolved in that way. And I suppose with it being a head, that's where hair comes in quite handy, isn't it?
It is quite useful because you can cover the joins, obviously, with the hair.
That's what I was thinking.
And the background, actually.
Yeah.
You can, especially when you're doing heavy machine stitching, because you can cover most of it.
Yeah.
But what I actually learnt from that was that you can't always expect to get it right first time.
Yes.
And being in clothing manufacture also taught me that actually there isn't anything that you can't rescue as long as you've got the patience to do it.
Yes, and that's a really good point in terms of patience, isn't it? Sometimes it can be all too easy to just have a fit and just throw something down or throw it in a cupboard and ignore it, and that's that. But as you say, if you stop, have a look, come back to it. It might be a week, it might be 3 months later. Come back and have a look. Put a different head on and different perspective. And yes, most things can be reused, and certainly that's one of the fantastic benefits of working with fabric and thread. It is a lot more conducive to reuse and rework and repurposing as well. And recently, have you been cutting any more heads out of things, or have you kind of moved on from that phase?
No, I don't seem to need to do it as often nowadays, but I still do a lot of unpicking.
Yeah.
Now, I do a lot of unpicking because, as I say, you can't expect to get things right first time. You wouldn't expect to go into a life drawing room and draw the perfect line the first time you put the line down. So why would you expect to be able to stitch it right the first time? You shouldn't ever think that you can't unpick and redo.
Unpick, yeah. And again, that's another fantastic piece of advice, because again, people beat themselves up of, oh God, I'm unpicking this again, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you've learned each time, haven't you? So there's no such thing as the embroidery police, is there? It's how you're developing, and as your skills go. And as you say, why do we beat ourselves up by thinking that everything's going to be perfect first time? It absolutely never is it?
No.
So linking on to that, I know quite a few people with those dreaded unfinished objects lurking about in the back of cupboards, possibly where something didn't go quite as planned and they haven't done anything with it. Do you have any of those lying around, or have you managed to use them all up and repurpose things? So
I actually don't have any unfinished projects.
Yay! Yay for you!
Yeah, because as I just said, thanks to my tutor at art school, Alf, he taught me that you would keep the best bits and reuse those in a piece of work.
Yeah,
the bits you weren't as happy with, you could always cut them up, rearrange them, put them down. It was sort of like it was like making collages. So you can actually do the same thing with fabric and stitch.
Yes.
But I never waste anything. So all the fabric is either reused in bits of applique. It can be recycled into my own work.
Yeah.
It can be kept as samples.
That's a good one, yeah.
Even if it's samples of what I don't want to do. Because it's just as useful to look at something that you would never want to do again as to look at something that you think, oh yeah, that would be useful in my current work. It's just as useful to think, oh well, I shan't use that because that didn't work. And also, I used a lot of the bits and pieces as strip weaving or applique in my workshops that I teach.
Right, yes. So that's always a good thing, isn't it, when you're doing your workshops, to have samples and ideas and pieces for people to work on as well. And that was just a fantastic point as well, about keeping a memory of what you wouldn't want to do again. Because we always think, don't we, that we're always going to remember everything. And then, do you know what? It just slips out of our head and we forgot. And then there we are again, making that same silly mistake, or that same thing. Why did I pick this technique or this thing? Last time I did, now I remember. I didn't like it. It didn't work out the thought, and yet here I am doing it again. So that's a really good point there for everybody, is to keep some ideas as well of things that you don't want to do again, because you will forget.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in terms of planning, you've just been working on 2 exhibitions. So there's the saying about being aware of long distance elephants. So that's those projects that seem so very far away when you agree to do them, and they slowly creep up on you, and suddenly there they are, looming large. So how do you manage your time and your distant elephants? So how do you keep track of your projects and your time, but still keep yourself flowing creatively?
Well, as chair of the 62 group, I've got to be organised.
Yes.
And so I also do a lot of travelling around the UK to teach and give talks. So I use the calendar on my computer to send me alerts for deadlines. And having been in business, I'm used to working on more than one project at once.
Yes.
But when I'm not travelling, I go to my studio, which is in my loft.
Mm-hmm.
I go there every day.
Right.
And I'm usually up there by 9 a.m.
Yes.
And I always do something. I'm always up there in the space, ready to do something. And sometimes I produce something and sometimes I don't.
Yes, yeah.
But a lot of the hard slog in my work is thinking about the ideas. So I can do that anywhere, really. So I'm doing that as I'm travelling about on a train, even in the bath. I get lots of ideas in the bath.
Oh, I love the bath. I'm exactly the same. I'm absolute so-and-so for being in the bath all the time. Where's she? Oh, she's in the bath again. It is. It just lets your mind wander, doesn't it? I work from home. I'm not a textile artist. I dabble, but my work is online marketing and producing podcasts and so on. But it's the same process in that I have a strict routine. I come into my office, I'm ready and interested to get on with my work, and I get off my chair and go outside and go for a walk. I'm thinking, that's my thinking time as well. So when I'm wandering along the seafront or running, you have to put that structure in place, I think, to be able to get yourself organised enough to do yourself justice and to produce that good work in the time scales that you need to, and give it the ideas and the plans and everything. Yeah, I can totally relate with that. And quite frankly, Sue, quite a few people that I do speak to, it's like, oh, well, we're creative and we're artists and we can't possibly have plans and deadlines and we just kind of go with the flow. And I think that's quite a difficult way to go about things, to be honest.
Yeah, I think being a professional artist it's all about deadlines and plans.
Yes.
So it's like anything, really. As I say, it's exactly the same as being in business. But I just find that regular practice is the best way, certainly for me, to be, for the creative side. I still give myself deadlines, even with my studio practice, as well as the deadlines imposed upon me by other people.
No, I understand that totally. And I absolutely love computer calendars and things that ding at you. I mean, I schedule my week, but I even have a reminders that go ding when it's lunchtime, because otherwise you get engrossed in what you're doing. You forget about lunch. And then all of a sudden my son's coming home from school and it's like, oh, whatever happened to lunch? I'm starving now. And then it's like the wrong time. And then I've got to cook tea and oh dear, it goes on and on. So yeah, so I have reminders even to tell me to go and have lunch and go and move and go outside and go get some fresh air. So we've talked briefly there about your exhibitions that you've got very soon that you've done work for. Is there other plans and projects, Sue, that you would like to share with us today, and possibly also maybe what the 62 group is getting up to? Anything you'd like to share to us that we can get excited about?
Yeah, well, next year I've got a big solo exhibition at the Fishing Heritage Centre in Grimsby.
Right.
And that runs from March to July.
Oh, that's a good long time as well. Yeah. Fantastic.
And actually, it's a follow-up from my Do You Remember Me exhibition, which was at the Knitting and Stitching shows last year.
Yes, which is where I met you, yeah.
The follow-up is called I Remember You. It's a project, it's a collected memories project. So this project is going to be ongoing over the next couple of years, because I've got another solo show in 2019 as well. So
right.
any work I don't get finished for the one next year,
yes,
I'll be still working on the collected memories the following year.
Right.
And listeners can find out more by clicking the I Remember You collected memories link on the homepage of my website, womanwithafish.com.
Right, and I'll make sure I've got all your various links in these show notes as well.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot more information as well on the blog, but all the links are actually on my website.
Fantastic. So that's something really to look forward to.
Yeah.
And
the 62 group, we're actually working on a large show next year, and that's going to be at MAC in Birmingham.
Right.
And it's a fantastic gallery, and it's called Control Shift, and it's an exhibition about changes in the various artists' work, either small or it could be a major change. Somebody may have changed from one technique to something totally different.
Yeah.
But the theme of the exhibition is it takes those changes and it's a showcase for those. So this is a big exhibition next year. It's the biggest one we've had for a few years, actually.
Right, okay. And that's in Birmingham?
That's in Birmingham next year, but we're hoping to tour it throughout the UK after that.
Oh, right. Well, that's something for us all to keep our eyes open as well then. So, fantastic. Well, Sue, you've absolutely got plenty to be getting on with, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah, that's for sure, yeah.
Now, we were just talking there about your website, and when we were chatting beforehand, I know you were saying that you're in the process of redoing your website.
Yes.
So that's something for us to keep an eye on. Now, you also have, so you've got your website, womanwithafish.com. You've got your blog as well for us to keep track of you on there.
Yes.
And other places, Sue, where can we find you as well?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Twitter. I'm on the Crafts Council directory, Axis Web. All the links are actually on the homepage of my website. If people go to the website, they'll see a whole row of links, that say A, C, W, all the
icons and so on.
Those, right. If you click on those, you go to the various places that you can find me and my work.
Fantastic. And that's brilliant that you've made it really easy for people to be able to do that. Now, do I also remember you telling me beforehand about an online course that you've been working on?
Oh yeah, that's something I'm doing with my two sons, Joe and Sam. They run a website called textileartist.org.
That's right, yes.
And at the moment, the course is actually running at the moment.
Yeah.
So it will be relaunched at a future date. But people can find out about it by signing up to the textileartist.org newsletter.
Right. Okay. So that's an important point. So this is a course that's going to be running periodically. So you sign up for a specific iteration of the course then.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Right, well, that's something else for us to all to look forward to as well. So I think as we just kind of wrap up there, so thank you so much for sharing the highlights of your very interesting stitchery story with us today, Sue. It's been absolutely fascinating finding out and getting some glimpses into you and your art and your very interesting journey from doing embroidery back onto fashion and then coming back into embroidery again to share all that with us. We've gone through all your various links. Have you any other points that you just want to add there, Sue?
Oh, there's just one more thing that I forgot to mention, which is an exhibition called What is Stitch? And that runs from the 5th of September to the 15th of October. And that's at the Sunbury Embroidery Gallery, Sunbury-on-Thames.
Yes.
And actually it's a selection of work from the Diana Springall collection. And one of my pieces of work is featured in that exhibition. And I think it'd be well worth, for anybody who's down that area, it'd be well worth going to see that because Diana's collection is second to none with contemporary embroidery.
Right, and that's called What is Stitch in Sunbury-on-Thames. Fantastic. And that was to the 15th of October, 5th of September, did you say?
Yes, that's right.
Bit of a trek for us northerners, but the nice thing about all of these exhibitions that you've mentioned, Sue, is that they are on for a decent amount of time, because I personally find it quite frustrating when something's on for 2 days or something, and it's just almost impossible to get your 12-year-old organised and get yourself down to go look at some of these things. It's nice to have some longer duration exhibitions, yes, that's for sure. Okay then, well, I think we've got the exhibitions, we've got your projects, and that's absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much, Sue. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. We look forward to seeing your exhibitions and your work in the future as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, thanks. If you liked this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and offers from our lovely guests. Please visit stitcherystories.com to join the fan club. Of course, if you have iTunes, then subscribe there to automatically get new episodes, and why not leave us a review and rating whilst you are there. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. So keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery stories.